Hey, what's going on, everybody? Thank you for checking out today's video, where I'm going to be jumping into the third installment in the lineup of movies initiated by Tim Burton's Batman from 1989, which is the 1995 Joel Schumacher film, Batman Forever. And this one stars Val Kilmer as Batman, Jim Carrey as the Riddler, Tommy Lee Jones as Two-Face, Nicole Kidman as love interest Dr. Chase Meridian, and Chris O'Donnell as the boy wonder Robin. But before I dive into my thoughts on this movie, I want to know about your experience with Batman Forever. So drop a comment below and let me know, when did you first see the movie and what was your impression of it? If you've seen my videos for the first two installments in the lineup, you've probably more than likely picked up on the fact that I'm a pretty mega Bat fan, and that my love for the character is something that has stayed with me throughout the majority of my life. And if you haven't seen those, then, well, now you know. I mean, I was all in by 1995, having watched both the serials from the 1940s and actively watching the re-aired episodes of the 1966 classic film and TV show starring Adam West, along with the Super Friends cartoons, as well as the very popular at that time Batman the Animated Series. And having absolutely loved the first two films and being an excited 8-year-old Bat fan, I was eager to hit the theaters to see this movie the moment it was announced, and literally followed almost every article and TV spot that I could find that discussed the development of the film's production. Now, some things definitely caught my attention, and a couple of those things I knew even then would more than likely make the film an altogether different experience, and that of course was the replacement of Tim Burton as the director and the replacement of Michael Keaton as Batman. But honestly, especially as an 8-year-old kid who just was excited to see more Batman, whereas I knew I might miss those elements, I was still super excited and very, very eager to see what they churned out. Also, being a humongous Jim Carrey fan at the time, my excitement was exponentially increased when he was announced as the Riddler, as the Riddler also happened to be my favorite Batman villain at the time. I was also pretty highly excited by the announcement of Tommy Lee Jones as Two-Face after having become a big fan of his after seeing the movie The Client, which was based on the John Grisham novel and was released the previous year. And just before this movie was released, I remember being lucky enough to have been staying over at my grandparents' house, who had HBO, and I was able to watch and videotape the behind-the-scenes featurette at the time that it premiered. And I probably watched that tape every bit of about 20 times before the movie came out, so yeah, I was incredibly hyped for it, to say the least. On the day I finally got to go see the movie in theaters, I actually had the urge to go use the restroom about 10 minutes into the movie, but held it for the entire remaining hour and 50 minutes because I didn't want to miss a single second of Bat action. So, did I enjoy the movie even though there was no Tim Burton and no Michael Keaton? Yes, absolutely I did. I had a fantastic time with it as a kid, and it was even the first movie I ever went back to the theaters for in order to catch repeat viewings, at the discretion of my caretakers, of course. And I still very much so enjoy watching it to this day. Now, does that mean that I loved it then, or love it now as much, or feel it's as great of a take on Batman as the previous two movies? No, I definitely wouldn't go so far as to equate it to either of the first two installments, as those two films continue to stand out even to this day as being very hard to beat in my opinion, for all of the reasons that I mentioned when discussing them. And this movie definitely left us hardcore Burton fans with some astoundingly important questions, such as, what in the neon hell is this? And much more importantly than that, why do I have nipples now? So yes, it's definitely not as edgy and dark in tone as the first two, and yes, the Bat suit and Robin suit both come equipped with nipples, and we get to see some odd close-up shots of the dynamic duo's rear ends to help solidify our appreciation for their godlike and heroic form. And yes, it heavily features some very over-the-top Jim Carrey, meaning if I were to say that Jim Carrey dialed up his Jim Carreyness to 11 for this movie, it would likely be considered a pretty generous statement by a good bit of audience's standards, especially today. But I really have to express my appreciation and love for the things that I feel like this movie does deliver well on, and talk about why I still really enjoy this movie when watching it to this day, and what makes it such an enjoyable experience for me still. Though it is different, Schumacher, like Burton, also effectively creates a unique and exciting atmosphere, brought together most notably by some extreme contrasts in colors and lighting, paired with a fresh and more upbeat and adventurous and highly memorable score by Elliot Goldenthal. The brighter colors and score definitely help to effectively convey that this movie, in stark contrast to the first two films, is focused much less on delivering an edgy but entertaining drama, and much more focused on delivering a fun and exciting time for mass audiences. And this is definitely by design and with intent as far as the studio goes, because though a good bit of audiences like myself expressed a good bit of appreciation for Batman Returns, its sponsors, such as McDonald's, felt like the movie's darkness and violence made it unmarketable to children and threatened to pull out of their sponsorship deal with Warner Brothers for future Batman projects if changes weren't implemented. Whereas I really can't say that I'm in support of the notions of sponsors dictating creative decisions, unfortunately it is something that studios and filmmakers do have to contend with in the real world, and oftentimes have to find ways to work around and within. And given the fact that these were the parameters, I feel like Schumacher did pretty well on delivering on both his task to the studio and its sponsors, as well as delivering on his attempt to please fans of Batman, and even to some degree fans of the first two films. I also highly enjoy the performances of the entire cast, and feel like everyone does a good job fitting in pretty well to this wacky and colorful new universe created for them. Though I will likely always consider Keaton as my favorite Batman of all time, I do think that Val Kilmer did a pretty great job on delivering a decent iteration. Particularly when he's in costume, he does very well with delivering all of his dialogue and expressions in a way that blends in well to the film's tone and atmosphere. His performance, however, to me doesn't really display much of a distinction between playing Bruce as Bruce and Bruce as Batman, so it kinda seems like he's playing Batman all the time to me. But then again, Bruce in the comics has trouble with that distinction as well, often feeling more like himself when he's in costume as Batman versus when he's not, and calling Bruce Wayne his real disguise. So, if I think about it in that way, I guess it's actually pretty fitting. Jim Carrey is also very Jim Carrey, especially once he fully transforms into the Riddler, which is always entertaining in my opinion, even if it can't be considered top-notch or Academy Award-winning acting. But on that note, I do actually want to say that I think his performance at the beginning of the movie, though still being slightly over the top and still being very much so a Carrey performance, does have a sincere and believable element to it in my opinion, and it's overall pretty convincing as a person who's on the brink of snapping due to his questionable ambitions and dangerous obsession with Boss Bruce Wayne coming at odds and triggering a meltdown. Now, I will say that there are elements of it that do feel a little bit recycled from Selina Kyle's transformative arc from the previous film, and by comparison, this execution of that type of arc does come across as being a little less natural due to some of the heightened and over-exaggerated deliveries and dialogue, but I still found it to be an overall entertaining experience. Tommy Lee Jones is also very entertaining as Two-Face in my opinion, and I really enjoy watching his performance in this because it differs so much from the majority of his roles where he's much more grounded into reality. And this gave audiences an opportunity to see a different side of him, proving that he could effectively pull off fitting into a more wacky and cartoony kind of setting, and provide a performance that was in line with the tone and atmosphere of the film. Now, I wouldn't go so far as to say that it's one of his very best performances by any means, but it's still pretty great in my opinion. I also feel like Nicole Kidman plays her character extremely well and convincingly, though from a writing standpoint, her character really isn't given much more to do than act as a highly intrigued, love interest of Batman's, and conflictingly of Bruce Wayne's. That said, I do like the fact that her character acts as the catalyst for Bruce's biggest personal struggle in this movie, which is the ponderance of whether or not he needs or wants to continue being Batman for the rest of his life. I also think that Chris O'Donnell did a great job portraying the first ever cinematic version of Robin audiences had ever gotten the chance to see, and felt that the writers did a pretty great job of honoring his origin story from the comics and adapting it into this film's setting. I honestly feel like Chris O'Donnell and Val Kilmer shared a pretty decent chemistry on screen as Bruce and Dick, and subsequently as Batman and Robin, playing the reluctant mentor and determined protege dynamic very well and convincingly. And the dynamic between the two characters is also written well in my opinion, keeping a good balance of emotional weight and tension throughout the movie, but also making it a fun and relatively lighthearted experience overall, accurately serving the film's atmosphere and energy. Though I don't regularly revisit this movie as often as I do the first two movies, or as often as some of the other iterations of Batman that have come out over the years, I would still say that I feel compelled to sit down and check it out at least once a year, or once every 2 years at the very longest. As a Mega Bat fan, I continue to get a strong dose of entertainment and excitement with each viewing of Batman Forever, even to this day, and still find it to be a very enjoyable viewing experience overall. I want to thank everybody for watching today's video. Please be sure to hit that like button if you enjoyed it, and consider subscribing so that you don't miss out on any of the awesome movie-related content we have coming up here on the channel. I hope that everybody out there is doing well, and I'll see you all in the next video. I'm Batman! Today's video has been brought to you by the 3 DOS Ghosts Gaming and Entertainment Organization. Please click down on the link below to check out and join our community Discord.